For some fighters in the sport of boxing, legacy is about where you've been, what you've been through, how you've managed to stay relevant and in the public's graces. But for fighters like Saul Canelo Alvarez, legacy doesn't mean the same thing. And as he has recently been interviewed and admitted to the fact that he can see himself going another 3 to 5 years, it may not be important for him to face off against the fighters that you would like to see him face, but he's marching to his own tune. But that tune is not a favorable or popular tune. Let's talk about this a little bit further. Once the boxing writers began to speak of title fighters, titleists, as duckers, there's a problem. Because typically they don't like to do that. They will go as far and wide as they can to avoid calling present day favorable, publicly sentimented favorable fighters ducks and dodgers. Such is the case with Canelo Alvarez. And a recent Boxing News 24 article that states, will Canelo Alvarez continue to cruise in the duck lane? Very interesting, because we've been talking about this for a while. We've been talking about the fact that he is not fighting the fighters that people would like to see him fight. It's not that there is a hate smear against this fighter, who's a talented and economically empowered fighter of this present day. But he's leaving a great deal of questions on the table when it comes down to legacy. There are fighters that Canelo could fight at least 2 to 3 times this year and get it out of the system of what's what. But when he continues to go along and pick and choose to not face the fighters that are even from his division, there's a problem. And when the sanctioning bodies allow this, it's an insult to the fighters who work very hard and campaign with dreams and aspirations of becoming the world champ. Some of them don't dream of fighting Canelo. They dream of just being a title holder. And since all of the titles are in his possession presently, but he's not facing the #1 Mandos for those titles, Why doesn't he just vacate? You know, trying to be the present day Floyd money wise, yeah, Canelo is breaking the bank, as well as platforms that display his fights. But the results are in, and the people are starting to stir. They're not happy. So, the Boxing News 24 article, which was written by Vince D. Ryder, link will be in the description, goes on as such. For multiple years, the undisputed super middleweight world champion Saul Canelo Alvarez has suddenly avoided his WBC mandatory challenger. And as we approach the month of March, the question is whether Canelo will finally step up and fight David Benavidez. That's that name again, people. Haven't we heard it? Haven't we heard that name? David Benavidez, who actually lost the WBC super middleweight title on the scale several years ago during the C-19 outbreak, and when fighters were trying to come back and fight in tented venues. Benavidez, whose record is currently 28-0 with 24 KOs, a man who has been deemed the Mexican monster, a fighter who has faced prominent opposition, particularly over his last couple of years. And that's kind of all that you can ask of a fighter when you're looking for them to face a challenge. And Benavidez, in his past 3 fights, going directly back to November of 2023, has faced Demetrius Andrade. Prior to that, in March of 2023, he faced Caleb Plant. And prior to that, he faced, in May of 2022, David Lemieux. All 3 are fighters that are much more of a challenge than what we've seen Canelo in the ring against recently. And see, this is not, again, a smear on him, but when you think about it, as the sentiment is, when he lost that title on the scale, he should have been at least given an opportunity to fight for the title. And that hasn't been the case. And Canelo has enjoyed being able to run around as an undisputed fighter, but not giving these other contenders their shot. The article goes on. Will he continue to cruise in the duck lane? Alvarez is ready to step back inside the squared circle as he has selected a date, but as of now, he doesn't have an opponent. Now, why is that he doesn't have an opponent? Because he's trying to go through that selective process that we talk about again. Picking, choosing who he may go in with. His current record of 60-2 with 2 draws and 39 KOs is respectable and prominent in today's era of boxing. Having over 60 fights is something that you just really don't see too much from the world-class fighters at the top of divisions. As we continue on, boxing fans, boxing pundits, and boxing legends are hopeful in regards to a Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez match on May 4th. But more than likely, that's a case of wishful thinking. David Benavidez is a former 2-time WBC super middleweight world champion. He won the title on 2 separate occasions in the ring, but unfortunately, he lost the title on 2 separate occasions in self-destructive fashion. The first time he was stripped of the title was in September of 2018 due to a positive test for cocaine. And 2 years later, he was stripped again for coming into a fight weighing over the super middleweight limit. And that was the fight that I mentioned, where Benavidez found himself in the ring during the COVID situation. But listen, what they're trying to say is what is being said, and it's straight off the cuff. In May 2022, David Benavidez destroyed David Lemieux as he scored a 3rd round TKO victory and won the vacant WBC interim super middleweight title. With the win, many assumed Benavidez was Canelo's WBC mandatory, but the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, didn't quite see it that way. He never sees it the general consensus way for whatever reason, and has gone through many avenues to adjust the rules when it applies according to his boxing eyes. Yeah. In November 2022, Suleiman announced that the winner of the bout between Benavidez and former IBF super middleweight champion Caleb Plant would be the mandatory challenger for Canelo. Benavidez would go on to win the contest by a way of unanimous decision, but unfortunately, Suleiman decided to move the goalpost. The WBC president did a remix and stated the winner of Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade bout would be mandatory for Canelo. In November 2023, Benavidez stopped Andrade in the 6th round, but unfortunately, Suleiman didn't order the fight between Canelo and Benavidez. While Benavidez was participating in multiple title eliminator bouts, he was on cruise control in the duck lane. Instead of fighting his mandatory, Canelo fought a declining 40-year-old Gennady Golovkin. John Ryder, a man who already had 5 losses, and the 154-pound undisputed champion, Jermell Charlo. Hardcore Canelo fans try to justify their hero's actions of avoiding his mandatory by questioning the credibility of Benavidez. Simply put, if Benavidez doesn't deserve a shot at the undisputed 168-pound crown, what made Ryder and Charlo qualify to receive the opportunity? And as I digress a moment, being the former champion 2 times, does that not seem like a situation where, even for history's sake, to become a 3-time super middleweight champion, where he could go down in history books as an accomplishment to have come back from trial and find himself being victorious, overcoming something that the sport of boxing, even through the Rocky films, has shown you time and again. But when fighters have privilege and they have paths that are carved out for them to avoid the difficult, then the narrative becomes a little bit eschewed. Yeah. Really, reality is beginning to settle in as some of the non-believers are starting to believe in regards to Canelo purposely avoiding Benavidez. The dedicated supporters still believe their favorite fighter is not ducking, but his next choice of opponent could make speculation valid. You think so? Because what we're looking at here is facts, people. Canelo is running out of opposition to face. And if he decides to fight Jermall Charlo on May 4th, we can officially call him a duck. Mal Charlo is a good fighter, but due to his battle with mental health issues and his inactivity, he's not the best candidate to fight right now. If Canelo selects anyone outside of Benavidez, then one should ask, what is the use of being a mandatory challenger in the sport if you're never going to receive the opportunity to face the champion? It is truly disgraceful how the WBC president, Suleiman, has allowed this travesty to play out. However, Suleiman has a chance to redeem himself. Back in July 2023, as a guest on Broadway Joel's show, Suleiman finally put a date on ordering the potential clash between Canelo and David Benavidez. Benavidez defeated Plant in March of this year, so his date for mandatory position is March 2024, Suleiman said. While Canelo has been making excuses as it relates to fighting David Benavidez, his bestie, Mauricio Suleiman, has been repeatedly making false statements. Now that the month of March is approximately a week away, Suleiman has been granted another opportunity to finally keep his word, ordering the fight between Canelo and Benavidez. Canelo Alvarez has put together a legendary career, but this chapter with David Benavidez is slightly tarnishing his legacy. It's one thing to avoid a boxer for a couple of years, but you're on another level when you purposely avoid your mandatory for multiple years. Alvarez isn't afraid of Benavidez, but he knows that Benavidez is the biggest threat to his throne. So at the present time, as we all impatiently are waiting for an announcement, we all wonder, will Canelo step up and give us fans matchup that we want, or will he continue to deluxe and select a ripe cherry pick? That article and link will be in the description box. But my take on all of this is consistently the same. I've been talking about Canelo and the fact that he's not facing the opposition that the masses would like to see him face. And it is time for him to do something different. Give someone else a chance. But what do you think? This is Stormy B. Man. Shout out to the mighty LDBC and Liberated Perspective, a third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Let me know what your thoughts are about this article and what type of move do you think that Canelo should make going forward for this year and beyond against his contemporaries from his weight division, not guys from elsewhere. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.